month of preparations.
Yeah. Okay, good. Let's click the go live. Are we live? Wow, that was fast. Oh, no, it says no data. No, we must be live. I hope we're live. Good afternoon. Welcome to a Grace Westminster Friday afternoon live stream. Gosh, we know what we're doing today. It's fantastic.
Obviously, always.
It's just because the thing says no data. It kind of made me momentarily panic.
Well, look, we can talk into our Abyss for an hour. That's absolutely fine by me.
Now it says excellent connection, so I'm okay.
Okay.
I just had a moment of panic there. Thank you for Roy saying we're online. Thank you for joining us, everybody. We know what's going on today. We're going to talk about Kelvin.
Yes, it's time.
It's time, exactly. We haven't done a live stream on the subject of white balance, I think, ever, actually. I don't think I even did one back in true lockdown days from my home office.
In the dark days.
It feels like the dark ages back then. This is very different. To those of you in Australia and parts of the planet where it's now winter, we have a very humid but quite pleasantly warm summer.
Yeah, enjoying sun over here.
Yeah, in London, so yay to us. But it's lovely to have you all with us today, whether it's snowing or sunny outside. Thank you, Jeremy, for your contribution to the Coffee Fund.
You.
For those of you new to us, which may be a couple, then please do give us a like and a subscribe. We'd very much appreciate it. Super Chat is ready for you to contribute to our little Coffee Fund if you feel like doing that. And if you are not signed into YouTube, so you can't do Super Chat, then we have the PayPal me link in the description. There are a few people who contributed using PayPal last week. I meant to write their names down. Anyone who has contributed through PayPal, thank you so much. I will give you the Hall of Fame next week once I'm a bit more prepared.
Yeah, and I definitely need a coffee. My coffee grinder broke this morning.
Oh, no.
Jammed.
That's disastrous.
That's right.
Oh,
So
my goodness.
I need another 2 coffees for today just to kind of balance up the
Yeah.
levels, you know.
Yeah, I understand. Right. Well, we'll make sure that you get caffeinated after the stream. Funnily enough, Baxter just said, why are color meters so expensive when almost every digital camera has a built-in color meter? You know what we were talking about just before we started going live? Yeah, exactly. Good question, Baxter. So white balance is a subject that maybe those moving from film to digital might not have had to worry about, or certainly it wasn't called white balance in film shooting terms. We had color corrected film, we had colored filters to correct, you know, cool lighting or warm lighting. Yeah,
so mainly most of the films that were made and are still made are daylight films.
Right, yeah.
So, but you can also buy a specific tungsten film that was correct specifically for the tungsten light. So, but the daylight films are corrected for daylight or for flash, which based around 5,400 kelvins.
Yeah, exactly. And if you if you had a daylight film and you needed to correct that, then you'd use, for example, an A2 or a B or an A12, which is a very warm filter.
That's from Nikon, isn't
There's
it?
a Nikon.
Okay.
I don't know what the Hoya terms are. And then Nikon also did 3B blue filters to handle very warm lighting. I think you used B for...
I think it's B60 or something like this.
No, it was B2, B8, and B12.
Okay.
And it was a mild filter used with daylight film to remove the reddish tinge from sunrise, sunsets, etc. So there we go. I had sort of prepared for that. Thank you, Adrian, for your contribution to the Coffee Fund as well. And thank you, everyone who said where you were, whether it was warm or cold or sunny. I'll have a little read through of those later. So yeah, basically white balance wasn't really called white balance until we had digital cameras, and then it was called white balance. Why? Why would we call it white balance, Con?
No one knows.
Good. I'm glad we've established that. No, because essentially it measures or shows you how cool or warm your white tones are, white being the kind of neutral color in your frame. Now, most people will use a gray card if they want to measure their white balance. Why do we pick a neutral gray instead of something else? You don't have to pick a neutral gray, but it's the most common one, essentially. So if you want to get the most even lighting across... knock my microphone, it's always good. If you want an even sort of color across your frame, whether you're doing portraiture or you're doing interiors or anything like that, then using a neutral gray card is the thing that we usually use to measure our white balance. And we'll go into that a little bit later on how to do that. But we're going to talk about the different modes first, because I think it's quite useful. Kotick Timmy said, I always find fiddling with white balance to get convincing skin tones the most difficult part of editing. And that's been true with all my digital Nikons. Now, that's very interesting. And then there's also questions about metering. A white balance meter and a light meter are two different things. Yeah. So white balance just measures your color temperature. It has nothing to do with the exposure. You can have a warm white balance and an underexposed image. It's like the two don't actually correlate necessarily. Not in the sense that you're talking about in terms of metering anyway, but a color meter, or a thing that measures the Kelvin of a particular light, the camera does have that capability built in. Roy said they don't have it. Well, it kind of does, because the camera has to measure the white balance, so it does kind of measure what the color temperature should be.
Color temperature is an objective measurement that defines the temperature at which a black body object would have to be heated to radiate a light in the same wavelength. Very simple, isn't it?
It's very simple. Yes. Andy says, color meters are for film, aka movie shooting. Yeah, they do use those for video. Yes.
Cinematography, definitely.
Exactly. They balance different hot lights, so the white balance is correct. It's a really good point. It's more, I'd say, crucial in video work, particularly because there are so many different types of lighting source, particularly if you're shooting outdoors and you've got sort of like fill lights, or you're shooting in a studio which has different types of light to emulate an outdoors or a particular time of day or something like that. So that's quite a good, valid point there.
But what I'm thinking is, before we get too deep into technical side of things, I think if you want to keep it simple, and if you shoot it mainly just outdoors without any, let's say, artificial light sources, etc., as long as you shoot raw, we would say stick it on auto white balance. You can choose different options, just a standard one or the one that keeps warm colors in. And you should be fine. You will be able to correct. The camera will get you with a reasonably good white balance setting. Will get you there, and then you can correct it in a post. So for JPEGs, it's a little bit more difficult because they don't have that much latitude.
No.
Now, this, if you travel and it's mainly outdoors. Of course, if you shoot in a controlled environment, so let's say in a studio photography or at home where you want to get a consistent looks, etc., that's where a proper profiles or settings for white balance become a lot more important.
Yeah.
So if you want to keep it simple, just do it this way, but you can basically make it a lot more sophisticated and complicated.
We're going to make it more complicated, yes.
Throw more things into it.
Why not? But yeah, it's absolutely true. Shooting on RAW kind of gives you so much more flexibility. One thing I've noticed with Nikon software is that if you shoot in JPEG, it doesn't allow you, I don't know about this, if this is the case for NX Studio, but certainly for NXD, it wouldn't then allow you to change the white balance if you shot in JPEG. I think there was a way to kind of go into a second submenu and then change them. But you know how, like, for example, in Lightroom, if you shoot on JPEG, you can still edit your white balance.
Yeah, definitely.
Even if you don't get that much information.
Yeah, I think it just doesn't give you the color temperature, but it gives you a slider from, let's say, yellow to blue. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Similar thing with Nikon, except like the white balance option would be grayed out, would let you manipulate that. So, so it does help to shoot on RAW. I mean, I'm one of those people that will only shoot on RAW if I have to, but if I am going to do a shoot that needs fiddling about with, then definitely.
You only shoot RAW if you have to.
Yeah, I know. Shh, don't shoot me.
Is that what you just said?
I did. Yeah, I did. Yeah, I only shoot RAW if I have to. I don't shoot RAW all the time.
You are now in history.
I know. People are going to remember this forever and ever.
Before I said shoot on auto white balance, so that's fine. We kind of, balanced it out.
Exactly. So, everyone can just hate us for that.
No, always shoot RAW.
It does.
Shoot JPEG only if you have to.
Good. Okay. So, right, that, all our confessions aside, no. So, Andy, this is a good question. Picture profiles are a different thing to white balance.
Yes.
So you have white balance profiles, which are all to do with the color temperature of the picture. I'll show you some examples in a minute. Whereas, for example, picture controls can adjust everything from, there is an option to change sort of, I think it's like tint or tone.
There's a tint option there, yes.
Yeah, but it also affects sharpness, contrast, brightness, and your kind of overall look of the picture. So it's quite a bit more comprehensive, the picture controls option. Roy says, I need an upgrade. Listen, right, I don't want to start a fight. So Kevin says, I do a custom white balance for my studio lights and save that as a preset. Yeah, we're going to be doing that. In fact, we're going to show you how to do that momentarily.
That's the thing. For studio setup, you can do all sorts of things. You're not just creating a white balance, let's say, just a profile. You can also create a color profile if you have something like X-Rite passport color check, and then you pair it up with a color calibrated screen, which you're going to calibrate yourself, and then with a printer as well. So there's a whole color management aspect that goes in there. So you can complicate as much as you want. Yes. And that's the thing. So there are different approaches to different use. So for outdoors, where you're going to take photograph in a park and then you go inside the shop and you're going to take a shot there, auto white balance will do really well. But for studio environment, if you're taking the same shot of a keyboard photograph and you're photographing books at home, you want to get the same color output all the time, because you're changing the object and, let's say, et cetera, et cetera. The same if you're photographing people, you want to have the same output for your white balance. So that way you're going to do a preset, let's say maybe a flash preset, which is, or you just dial down your Kelvin of your lights that you use, because let's say like my alien chromes, I think I dialed to 5500 Kelvin. So I always set my balance there, and it gives me a really neutral image, which I can play with in the post-processing later on.
Right, and when you're doing portrait work, you want the picture to kind of be as neutral as possible, or as flat as possible, so that you can post-process.
But that's the thing, when we talk about white balance, especially auto white balance, different cameras produce different color output, and that's to do with the white balance as well, because we know that Nikon produce more cooler image, so it's a little bit more bluish. And then a lot of Canon users say that it's a little bit warmer, can produce warmer image. Now, keep in mind that Nikon considers daylight at 5200, while a lot of people say it's either 54, 5600 to a lot of users. So Nikon goes a little bit more on that side of things, and I think, that's one thing we need to remember when we use, let's say, auto white balance.
Yes.
So yeah, if you tend to prefer more warm image, then you may want to adjust that as well.
Yeah, it's true. And if you are moving from one camera to another, you might notice a difference in auto white balance. I remember when I very first picked up a D100, and I was working for a magazine at the time, and the photographer there said, never shoot an auto white balance, it's rubbish. And then, but we were doing very specific venues, so we always had to pick either a custom white balance setting or one of the presets, depending on what we were doing. Now, I would find that auto's more reliable, and you also have these sort of slightly more tweakable options in auto. So let's just give an example to you, because we have a bit of a show and tell here today. Let me just turn that on. Show and tell, that's the thing. Do you get that?
I know, it's all going to be interactive.
Something like that, not interrupting. So this is our Z7 II, I think I've got here. Yeah, Z7 II. Oh, lovely. There's your, I hope you don't feel dizzy, me doing that. So you have to put your hand here. Here.
Like and subscribe.
So in the Zs, here's our white balance options. Now, under auto, we've actually got 3 different options. So we have keep overall atmosphere, which is what it is straight out of the box. Oh, I'm much louder. I just noticed how much louder I am when I talk. I'm just going to dial that down a bit. Then we have keep white, but reduce warm colors. And then we also have an auto, which is keep warm lighting colors. Now, if you put your hand right sort of, let's just move that back a bit. There we go. Okay, so that's keep warm lighting colors. All right, now I want you to have a look at keep overall atmosphere. I would say that that's a bit too cool for here. And then that's reduce warm lighting color. So you see the differences?
Yeah, definitely.
Ooh, there we go.
And now keep in mind that that system in auto setting measures the light between 3,500 kelvins to 8,000 kelvins.
Right.
So that's the range it measures from.
Well, yeah, exactly. So that's its kind of auto range, and different cameras will do different things. So that I thought might be quite interesting. We'll plug in different cameras. We've got the Z7 II and we've got a D780 here. So how you preset or choose a custom white balance is slightly different on those 2 cameras. So just in case that's useful for you, we'll show you how to do that in a bit. So apart from your 3 different auto modes, and you can pick and choose which one you find preferable, you've also got various different other options. Now, I downloaded, I think this is from a digital camera, but I just thought this was kind of cool. let me just find the window. There we go. So this is kind of a single scene that they've shot with lots of different white balance settings. And if you're watching this after the fact, you can always pause it and just study that little sort of chart a little bit differently. But it's worth taking the time, if you haven't faffed about with white balance much, just to take a picture of a scene, like a consistent scene, and then just try all the different white balance settings so you can get a feel for how different they are, both indoors and outdoors. It's quite a lot of fun. I need to also clarify that when I said I only shoot RAW when I have to, I shoot RAW commercially. I don't shoot RAW for my personal, like, pictures of books that are going to go on Instagram. Do you see what I mean? Why would I shoot RAW? What am I going to do?
Well, once you explain it, all makes sense.
It's like, because Matt was like, get Becky a t-shirt that says, I only shoot RAW when I have to. I'm going to get one of those.
When you say when I shoot RAW, when I have to, it means that you do a lot more JPEGs.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
RAWs,
Yeah.
you see, so.
Well, in the last year, I have done 0 commercial shoots. So yes, it's true in the last year. But prior to that, when I was doing weddings and events, obviously most of my shots were RAW.
Look, even this thing is set to RAW. Okay?
It's really annoying as well. Anyway, so I'm just having a little look here at the comments.
Well, actually, we're talking about, while you're in the comments, another thing that I want to say that, when they're talking about different presets, etc., what Tom Hogan says in his book, he says, since altitude, time of day, time of year, cloud cover, and distance from the equator all alter the daylight color temperature, one value does not apply to every situation.
Yes.
So I guess that's why we don't talk about white balance that much and what specific settings to use.
Yeah.
That's why we always say kind of, this is the range, those are presets, they're not exactly set values, but this is the range where you need to look at and then adjust it to the way you like it.
Yeah, exactly. Michael asks a good question. Does white balance matter in the original color image if changing to mono in post-processing? I would not see any reason why. You might find a subtle difference if you're shooting at, for example, a completely at odds white balance setting to what your lighting is, because then when you convert it to mono, it might give you a slightly different shade.
It's almost like a color filter, isn't it?
Yeah, a shade of gray in your whites. But apart from that, I wouldn't actually see that it would make any difference.
I think within 500 kelvins, there won't be any difference.
No.
Or very not unnoticeable. Yeah.
But it will be tonal differences, obviously, because it's black and white. So yeah, if you want to have a little experiment with that, Michael, you certainly can, you'll see subtle differences. As I say, it's a little bit like putting a color filter, one of the many color filters on the front of your camera if you were shooting film.
Did you put the audio up?
I put it down when I was doing this because it was like in the red, and now it's normal.
Oh, okay.
Now it's back to normal. I haven't changed anything. Why? Do you think we're too quiet?
No, we're good.
We're good.
Just, yeah.
Are you just paranoid about the sound?
Yeah.
After spending
Shall
hours.
I whisper?
Yeah, exactly, Andy. Like Fro knows photo. What's his name? Jared Poland. He wears an I Shoot Raw t-shirt. I'm just gonna get an addendum at the bottom of mine. Yeah. With the like long clarification and then like a whole essay on the back which explains these.
So it's called artist statements. It's not really political things. It's artist statements.
Yeah, exactly.
You normally get artist statements on any exhibition you go to, right?
That's right. So I'm going to get a t-shirt with my artist statement. That's right. So did Nikon leave the filter out like they did with the D3400 for sharper images? Oh, is there an AA filter on the D3400? I can't remember.
Not the camera. I would check if it has an AA filter or not.
No.
I don't think it's important for this particular camera.
No, exactly. It's an Foteini's in rainy Athens. She sent me a picture, a video earlier. It was like really tipping it, bucketing down.
Once you have a rain once in the moon time, I'm sure you can appreciate that.
Then you
moment,
can appreciate the rain. Yeah. Hello, and thank you for joining us, Foteini. Our producer is still on holiday, which is partly why we're always a little bit frazzled at the beginning of our live streams. Why we don't have any giveaways at the moment. We haven't got anyone in the background putting notes
We can't
down.
talk and type at the same time.
Definitely not. Definitely not with a white balance live stream. So Now, this is interesting. Dixon says, I tested my eyes and found that the left doesn't see the same colors as my right. So I can no longer trust my eye/brain as to what is white. Certainly scenarios where if you do have, because I have quite a few clients who are colorblind to some degree, or they're like red colorblind or green colorblind.
And that just kind of raises the whole question to another level, isn't it? Because how do you manage the white balance?
Yeah, then you very much do need to trust your equipment, I would say.
That's the thing. And another thing we need to keep in mind that, okay, those screens at the back of the camera, they're not exactly, let's say, 100% accurate in terms of color reproduction.
No.
So what you see on the back of your camera, then, you know, it may not necessarily actually be the colors that you see. They will be close enough, but not the same. Remember the D700 and D800 screens? I think D700 was really purple screen.
It's really warm and fuzzy.
Exactly. And then when D800 came in, a lot of people say, well, why my images look too green on the back of the camera? That's the thing. So there's always a certain level of trust where you have to put in your equipment. So not just trust your eyes, but trust the equipment. And then once you have, let's say, the laptop or the screen you're editing on top of that, that brings another level of complexity.
Yeah. Now, you were mentioning to me the other day about how you could, for example, customize and pre-program all your white balance settings, but then if you're going to upload those images onto a computer where you haven't calibrated your screen, then none of it's going to look right anyway. So there is that next step that you can get into. It's very, very technical. I would say that, you know, you could probably spend quite a bit of time researching that. In fact, Mike Eleftheriadis of Nikon Owners London Group did a great course for a long period of time on color calibration and how to calibrate your camera versus your computer versus your printer and any other devices that you're using so that you get that same color readout, if you like, because you do have to make adjustments for print and digital. And
well, effectively, once you print, you convert that digital information into analog information.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's another level of processing that's there. Then also the type of the printer paper. You may need to create a profile for this specific paper that you print on.
Yeah.
You know, if you use let's say, aftermarket inks for your printer, not the actual, let's say, inks from the manufacturer, that adds another level of complexity as well.
That's a good point. Yeah, exactly. So, so there's plenty of different extra elements to consider, particularly if you're starting your own studio or if you like to get everything perfect.
Yeah,
then
if you'd like to have a fun weekend setting this up, absolutely you can do that. Yeah.
Exactly. But in terms of trying to get it as right as possible in camera or giving your pictures a consistent look, one thing that I think has become more prevalent, let's say, because of social media, is knowing when you look at a particular photographer's pictures, you know that the shot is taken by them, right? So when you go on to, for example, Instagram, I'm using Instagram as an example because it's a platform that a lot of photographers use to kind of just showcase their work. You can kind of see where a photographer has gone, okay, this is my profile, as in this is the picture profile. This is what I use, copy pasta, as you say, for every single picture, whether it's a Lightroom preset or whatever they're using.
Or the filter.
Or a filter, yeah, exactly. So, for example, I look at Donna Cruz's food photos and everything is very clean looking, but also it's quite cool in terms of, it's not, you know, everything isn't very warm.
Well, that's the thing,
fuzzy.
and that we bring another level of complexity because what is white balance and what is color gradient?
Yeah.
That's another thing. And then maybe that's why we're coming back to Andy's comment on the picture profile.
Yeah.
You know, that adds another level of complexity. And from these points of views, the idea is, okay, if you want to get the consistent look, especially from this particular shoot, as you say, in the studio environment, or you will photograph an event in one particular venue. So if you want to get the same look on all, let's say, on all cameras, perhaps if you did 2 or 3 shooters, but for all your images as well, then all you're trying to do is really to get a consistency more than color accuracy. Of course, color accuracy comes there. But then, again, once you start to grade your shoots, especially fashion photography, food photography, as you say, let's say Donna Cruz makes it cool. Well, I don't think that she perhaps, you know, sets it up as a white balance in the camera. No. Maybe she does later, but you can also set it up as a white balance in the camera as well if you want to.
Yeah, exactly. And I know, for example, there are other photographers that do product photography, which they're obviously using a particular studio light setup and they have their white balance tuned to the studio lights that they're using. And then all their pictures basically have that same consistent look.
Generally, if you buy studio lights in a manual, it will tell you exactly what the color temperature of those lights are.
Yeah, exactly. A couple of people are pointing out, for example, Adrienne said, don't we all see color differently? Yes, technically we do, which is why I think it's quite a subjective thing in terms of what is pleasing to you. Some people, I quite like my pictures to look a little warmer, whereas others might go, oh, that's too warm. So I would rather use a kind of cool color temperature. Now, there was another, Andy said, yes, I think this is why Pro monitors cost $4,000, this is Australian dollars, or more. And this is why the tech is there to give the best colors for the text to edit on. Yeah.
I think if you, let's say for home use, you can get screens, let's say like a NEC screens, NEC, they can be had about 1,200-1,500 pounds. So I would say this is a good level. You can go low with Dell's, with IPS panels, but then you have a lottery with the panel that you'll get. But if you want to get consistency in terms of just screen quality, NEC monitors are really good, and then you got another level like ISO monitor screens, and they become quite expensive.
Yeah. A couple of people are asking if you can calibrate the screens of your cameras. I mean, yes, there is actually an option in the setup menu to tweak the brightness and the color of your image that comes up on the back. I don't know how useful that is.
I don't recommend to use auto brightness on the screens because it's very difficult to judge the exposure of the image because of the auto brightness. That's why I always keep my monitor balance either, let's say 0, 1, and I'll just leave it at that all the time. So that just gives me consistency. You can't calibrate them, let's say, with the color calibration devices, like, let's say, X-Rite, or Spider things. I know you can do obviously screens on the computer, but you can also do TV screens as well. So that's again another fun project. But you can't really do the same thing with the monitor. So you can adjust the settings inside, but not create a proper profile that will load up as soon as you turn on the camera. Yeah,
exactly. You mentioned the color checker earlier, which is basically like this little passport, has a neutral gray on one side.
Yes, and then you got a kind of color patches or swatches.
Pantone.
Panettones.
Panettones on the inside. That's quite a useful tool to have if you are let's say a location or a studio photographer and you work in different environments, then you can kind of just have that in your kit bag. You can take your neutral gray reading. You can also take your color reading. Then when you're switching from one room to another or in one location to another, then you've always got that kind of consistency, if you like.
It gives you consistency and it gives you a neutral profile. So which means it's gives you, it's not exactly maybe the colors that you want to end up with later on after color grading, but it gives you a really good start to play in the post-processing, obviously depending on your type of photography, of course.
Yeah, exactly. So is there a way to easily calibrate a camera's screen? No, but there is an easy way to calibrate a computer screen. There's various tools that you can use. There's also the Spider thing that you can get, which is like the next level.
It's a device, that's, I think they're about 100, 150. It's a starting point of those. Again, it's another kind of worms because when you're monitoring the screen, you really have to monitor for the lighting in the room that you have.
Yes.
Because if you got a yellow light in your room, it's one thing. If you got daylight, it's a different thing. If you got, let's say, cool white, that's a different thing. So when you're calibrating your screen, it's normally you got several options where you decide what you need to do. And also, some people have proper print reference screens and things like this. So you may want to calibrate it to the actual light that screen produces. So,
Good gracious. I just have to say thank you so much to Vince for your contribution to the Coffee Fund.
Thank you.
I wish I'd been here earlier when you picked up your lens. I didn't see you. Thank you also to Adam and also to Adrian and Jeremy. I think I mentioned at the beginning, but thank you
very much,
guys, all of you, for your contributions to Coffee Fund. Very much appreciated. Con will be fully caffeinated at the end of the live stream. Definitely
2 pints straight.
That's right. Exactly. So I have a question for you before we go through the other options on the back of the camera. So when I was working at a historical house. It was an old manor house, and I used to have to do a shoot there consistently, usually about once every 3 months or something when they had tours and stuff. And I had a D200 at the time, so everything on the D200 was very warm. It was a very warm camera.
That's true.
So what I would tend to do, because we weren't allowed to use flash in there, is I would just go to one of the presets. I'd kind of take a couple of shots. I'd go, yeah, that's okay. I then learned much later about neutral grays and doing your presets and stuff like that. But I suppose even with the D200, if I put those pictures, if I shot in RAW, which I did.
Becky shoots RAW.
Even with the D200.
Sometimes.
Back then, sometimes, when I feel like it.
On a good day.
when I'm going to post
it's raining. But it's always raining in England.
That's right, except today. Then even with like cameras that are lower resolution DX cameras, because a lot of our watchers are not FX Z shooters or D850 shooters. It's still worth shooting on RAW and then shooting auto in those situations, or you think using the presets was a good idea?
It really depends. If they have the lighting, basically the same lighting throughout the manner,
pretty much,
then you can probably do some test shots with different profiles, so like even different, you can set it to, let's say, whatever lighting is there, incandescent or something like that.
Yeah.
Take a shot. If you see that they look more or less what you envision, then just stick to that.
Yeah.
I would personally say after the first day, as you say, if you would come back to it, the first shoot would be key to work out what profile you need to create, because then you would look at your raw files in the post, you see what the color temperature should be, and the next time you shoot, you just set that color temperature.
Yeah.
Again, run some tests, you can take a few shots. I mean, the good things on those cameras with the live view, on the digital cameras and even DSLRs, you can actually set the camera to live view and then run the white balance options.
Yeah.
And it will actually give you a preview.
Exactly.
Again, it's not 100% accurate or scientific due to the calibration of the screen, and also the lights and the room lighting that would affect what you see.
Yeah.
But it will get you close enough. And the reason why I wouldn't go with a auto white balance, because on one shot you might get 5,500 kelvins. On another shot you'll get 5,550 kelvins, and another shot 5,400 kelvins.
And then you've got to tweak every single one of those.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if you want to get a consistent look, even in the same room, then you have to highlight all the images from that set and then do batch processing to specific white balance, which is pain in the neck.
Yes.
Realistically.
Absolutely.
So
and we were back on, I think, Photoshop CS1 at the time, so I don't even think it was that.
Yeah, it would be Camera Raw, but Camera Raw at the time I think was quite difficult to do batch processing on.
Yeah, and we had, what was that Apple software? Was it called Aperture?
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
yes,
that was what we used to use. Anyway, as the lessons to my younger self.
But the idea is, again, get a consistent result. That's the thing. Auto is a bit of a kind of random number generator.
Yeah. Paul, for example, says auto white balance can give problems for panoramic merges.
Here we
It's
go.
a very good point. Michael did ask, do different sensors give different color balances for the same setup? Like the D7100 has a Toshiba sensor, while the D500 has the Sony sensor, and there seems to be differences.
I think color rendition itself may be different, and also color science may vary.
Also, it's a different processor. In
Different
both of
process, exactly. But the color reading, actually, they should be around the same. It's just they may come out looking slightly differently based on other parts. But when, let's say, Tom Hogan again compares, let's say, white balance measurements by software developers like Adobe and Capture One, and color measurements from camera manufacturers.
Yes.
And they say even the same number could show completely different results.
Isn't that interesting?
Well, not completely, but slightly different results.
Variance.
And he tends to say that camera manufacturers actually have much tighter profiles to measure from and spectrums to measure from. So therefore, he tends to trust more to them. So while I think the readings, let's say, on all Nikon cameras would be roughly the same, it's the combination of sensor and the processor that would affect color renditioning.
Yeah, and like Randall, for example, pointed out that videographers will color grade themselves after the fact. They will shoot in VSC log and then do their colors.
Well, that's the thing. So effectively, VSC, if you call VSC log, basically maybe flat profile. So that's what camera users would understand. But as we say, color gradient is effectively nowadays our Lightroom. What we do in a Lightroom now is effectively a color gradient.
Yeah. JP also says, I only shoot RAW, always have my Nikon on cloudy and nothing auto white balance. It removes some of the latency between shutter press and shot taken. I actually found this out because one of our lovely viewers, Daniel, was going out to shoot. He actually won some awards for this shoot that he did of very exotic, rare species of bats. And I think I talked about it before, but there were various different...
The corona type.
No, but there were various different things that one could do to speed up the camera taking the shot, and one of them was removing any auto functions, like no auto white balance, obviously no delighting or anything like that, but just having the camera preset and manual as much as possible would remove that little bit of latency of pushing the button and the camera taking the picture.
While I personally never noticed that, but maybe I'm just slow. But
no, but I mean, we're talking fractions of a
but
millisecond.
that's what I'm thinking. But I'm thinking, yeah, the less automatic functions you would have in the camera, it just makes logical sense. The less automatic things you have, from focusing points down to one and full manual settings, etc. I guess yes, it should speed up the process.
Yeah, exactly. So let's go through as I've got them here on the screen. Let me switch over again. Here we go. So I'm going to just show you a piece of paper. You're going to have to hold this for me.
This is our grey card.
This is our grey card. It's actually a Nikon owner sign-up sheet, but anyway. But so just to give you an idea, it's going to be quite interesting. Let me pop this onto white balance. It's fun trying to do this back to front. So we've gone through our auto settings. Now, let's say, here's our natural light auto. Obviously, if you were outdoors, that would warm up everything, which would have otherwise been quite cool. Again, with all of these settings, particularly in the Z cameras, but in also most DSLRs, you can customize them. You see that? This allows you to, for example, shift your white balance to a more preferred, I mean, I wouldn't ever shoot like that, but you can actually tweak it if you want to by shifting that around. You can use the touchscreen as well.
Again, the idea of setting this up, you generally set it up once and leave it at there.
Exactly, based on your preferences. So we've got our natural light auto, then we've got direct sunlight, which if you look is quite similar, but if you were shooting in direct sunlight, you would get an ever so slightly, what is it? It's like a fraction warmer, I would say, than the natural light. Then we've got our cloudy setting. Now, cloudy tends to cool everything down, so that's why it's much warmer. I know a lot of people that shoot cloudy just as a general rule.
Just like JP, yeah?
Yeah, just like JP, exactly. They just like that sort of slightly warmer look, and they can fix it afterwards if they need to. Then we've got our shade, which is even cooler than... the light itself is even cooler, I should say, not the white balance setting.
I know, that's the thing. We always, it's like with apertures, when we say small apertures, actually, you know,
exactly.
like high F number.
Shade is cooler, which means that the white balance setting is warmer.
Photography is tricky. Yeah.
It is. Then we have our incandescent settings. Now, I believe, yes, this one is also, they're all customizable, but when we get to fluorescent, there are...
Seven settings.
7 settings for fluorescent.
Between 2,700 kelvins to 7,200 kelvins.
So there's a lot of Kelvin going on there.
And there's a lot of fluorescent lights around.
There is. Yeah. So here's the interesting thing. For example, if you look at the sodium vapor and then you compare it to warm white, and then white fluorescent, which is
kind of purple.
Yeah, it's interesting. And then cool white. Now, I think the one that we worked out was the best for our lights in the studio, in our little studio here, is day white fluorescent, because it's the closest thing that we've got. Then we've got daylight fluorescent, and last of all, high temperature mercury vapor. Wow. I don't even know what that light looks like, to be honest. But anyway, so I think if we were going to use that, we would stick with the day white fluorescent. Last up, we've got our flash option, which obviously flash tends to make everything look quite bleached out. So this is quite a yellow looking white balance. And then you've got your manual white balance setting, which if I adjust it, you can actually dial in the thousands of Kelvin that you want it to be set to. So if you know, for example, that your studio lights or something are... What are they?
My alien chromes are 5500.
Right, so for example, I'm going backwards. It's quite hard to go back. So for example, I would leave it at that, and then that should be correct for your studio lights.
The Godox lights, the ones we film at home, is 5600. Yeah.
Right, so then I would bump it up a little bit. Ah, there you go. So that's for your Kelvin if you know the color temperature of your lights very specifically. Now, the preset.
The fun bit.
This is the fun bit. So as you can see there, at the bottom of the screen, I'm going to point to it down there. There we go. It says OK, and then it has a line, and it says measure mode. So if I push and hold the OK button, which I am, for about 3 seconds, then I point my camera at a neutral gray, and then I press OK again. Now it has decided that that is the Kelvin reading.
Well, it's pretty good, actually.
And that's my preset, and that will stay my preset until I decide.
Because if you look at the white, now it's kind of more or less gray.
Exactly. So that's how you would do it on a Z camera. On the DSLRs, it's a little bit different. Do you remember how to do it? If I
yeah.
We just switch over. Live scene switch here. So if I plug that in, well, easier said than done because I can't see what I'm doing.
Okay, so
Turn the camera on.
the DSLR, all you have to do is press the white balance.
Let me go. Where's the white balance button?
Shall we switch it off to the live view? Is that what it is?
Yeah, and then you've got your white balance on the back. We're using a D780 for this. So if you're using a D4 or 5, I think it's on the bottom, those little extra buttons on the bottom. I think on the D850, it's on the top somewhere, or it used to be. I don't know if it still is, actually, I've forgotten. So if we go to camera record mode.
Okay, so you hold the, nope, I've done it again. Okay, so you hold the white balance button, and then you can back wheel basically scroll through all different modes that we have. So to get to preset, we're just going to go through all those settings until we find PRE1. So in this case, you can actually create several different presets.
Yeah.
So I think it's up to 9 or 6. Okay.
It might be more in the menu. Maybe it's not. Maybe
Could
it's 6.
Okay, well, let's go to number 1. So all we have to do now is actually hold white balance button for a few seconds till PRE starts to flash.
Yeah.
Just like this.
And then
we're going to take a shot of
I'll hold that. I'll be
the
lovely
grey
assistant.
card. Okay.
The white card in this case.
Going to focus.
Well, because I'm using an 85 mil. You're going to have to.
Choice of lens.
Why did I choose an 85?
Here you go. And it
Data
says
required.
data acquired. It will normally flash good on the top screen, info screen on the camera.
Yeah, you can't see it there.
And that way, it just sets it this way. Here we go.
So there you have it. I mean, that possibly looked a little bit more complicated with the DSLR, but it wasn't. It's just pushing and holding the white balance button and doing the same thing as you would with the Z cameras. And then just using your neutral grey or white sheet of paper in our case. It's like an episode of Blue Peter.
Well, actually, while white piece of paper may be not the most accurate solution, it's pretty good though. So if you don't have any grey card around, which you normally have to buy somewhere because it's like a cardboard card, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Probably about 10 to 20 pounds cost. So you can always find a piece of A4 sheet of paper and just take a shot of that, and it generally will get you in a good place.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I'm just going to have a look, because obviously we were doing the screen grab, so I wasn't looking at your comments. But
demonstration.
I thought that was quite a good demonstration live on air. So Roy said white cards are more accurate than grey cards. So that's interesting. Haven't actually compared the two, but that's really good to know. Avner said with all the processing, who cares with what white balance we take all the time because we're dealing with RAW. Exactly as we said, Avner, you're quite right. If you are shooting in RAW, then you can do what you like, really. It's like the world is your oyster.
Well, that's the thing. It's nowadays white balance more gives you consistency more than anything else. So just preset white balance.
Yes.
You know. And again, for travel photography, any outdoors photography, street life, things like this, auto white balance will do a really good job, and you can always fine tune it slightly. Let's say if you wanted to be a little bit warmer, you can do that. That's like it's really where we are in a set environment where different variables are set, and we want to get consistent result. The idea is, okay, why won't we use auto white balance? Why won't we just use a manual white balance to whatever setting that is?
Yeah, and I think if you want to remove that extra step from post-processing, if you don't want to tweak your white balance, and doing it right in camera is a nice way to do it.
That's the thing. And in most studio commercial photography, the idea is to get the most neutral result possible. This just gives you a good room to play with. So that's why you set the proper white balance, you do a gray card, you do, you have color passport, check, etc. And you normally create a profile in your software like Lightroom and Capture One. It's just to give you this a kind of reference file, kind of, a starting file to work with, and then you can color grade as much as you want.
Yeah, exactly. Now, Drazen said white balance's standard output profiles are a matter of brand. So, because that was a comment to what you were saying earlier. And then there was another comment that I wanted to read here. Randall asks if everyone gets a benefit from the coffee fund. Yes, we do get coffees for the staff. Don't worry, because we have a lovely team that are keeping the show on the road while we do our live stream each week. So it gets shared around. I will go and do the coffee run myself personally
Lots
afterwards.
of free riders here.
That's right.
Well, we do all the work now.
No, they're covering.
They're on the phones now.
That's right.
Like they're on the battleground.
That's right. They are really on the front lines. JP said, worth noting, if you adapt white balance, so if you shoot Kelvin to match sunlight at sunset, you lose the sunset feeling.
That's true. Again, that's the thing. And if you use auto white balance, have you ever tried to photograph sunset, let's say in sunrise? First of all, your exposure is all over the place, but also the color reproduction. As you say, the colors that we naturally see during the sunset are very different on camera. We will show you.
Yes.
Again, yeah.
Very, very true. Adrian said a lot of street lights used to be mercury vapor. I can't say it. That's good to know. Because we have kind of quite diverse street lamps. I think they all consistently use similar bulbs now.
There was an old gas lamp somewhere here, no?
It's around the corner.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
true.
we still got a gas lamp.
What color temperature is that?
I have no idea. Well, it's like candle flame, isn't it?
That's
so
true.
Probably quite warm.
Mm.
Andy said, I think M-Vapor, thank you, M-Vapor, that's a good way to say it, is what the bulb hot lights use in filmmaking. So the big floodlights, acronym to HMI. Oh, is that what the trade calls it? As opposed to LED lights.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, it's a lot of the things are changing nowadays because, a lot of, we're starting to get those really high quality commercial LED lights.
Yeah.
For constant lights, which are really good nowadays compared to what we had even 5 years ago, which was Wild West, where you had a spread between £50 and 5 million.
Yeah.
We now can get reasonably priced, LED lights like Godox. They're reasonably priced, £300 to £500 for basic lights, but compared to, let's say, cheap panels that you can buy for £100, the actual color consistency is just much, much better.
Yeah, and it's quite different. Sam said this is just another way to get it right, in camera first rather than faffing about later.
Well, that's the thing. Everyone has different approach.
Yeah.
Everyone is different, and that's why we give an option to everyone. That's the thing. I like to edit my image in the post. It doesn't mean that I'm going to stick everything on notes. No. I want to get things right in camera, but things like, let's say, color grading, it's so different from, it doesn't necessarily what camera shows you, you actually, want to get. But again, everyone can say, well, I want to see it true to the life. Yes, but if I'm in fashion photography, then I'm an artist, and effectively I design what it should look like. That's the thing. So there are different approaches to what you shoot. If you do, let's say, documentary street photography, it's a very different approach. Yeah. If you're a studio guy, it's a completely different approach.
Yeah, it's very true. It's interesting how, for example, because JP said grey cards are more for white balance. When you go into Lightroom, for example, you've got that neutral grey picker. If you do have, for example, a reference shot, obviously, as we said, and as Tom Hogan pointed out, different software treats different neutral greys even as different Kelvin settings. So
that's true.
But if you're only ever shooting and post-processing in one piece of software, you could always do that. You could use the dropper. If you have your neutral grey shot at the beginning of your shoot, as a couple of people said, that's what they do. They have their color checker passport as the first shot of the shoot. Then all of your shots after that, if you batch process,
that's true.
will be
and
correct.
You generally create a profile, which you then load up to Lightroom or Capture One.
Yeah.
With Capture One, it's a little bit different. It's almost like creating a LUT, which is, those video profile things.
Right. No, we don't.
Lookup table. Lookup table.
Thank
That's
you.
the word for it. But you can creatively, do that effectively, and you can take it to whatever level you want to be. From auto, which is, I guess, basic level, to 11, So.
Oh, I'm shooting at the basic level then. I like auto.
Becky shoots raw when she has to.
Never going to live it down.
This is like before we had this 24-200 fiasco. Now Becky shoots raw when she has to. I
shoot raw when I have to. Yeah. I like the 24-120. I'm the people's photographer. Oh my God.
What am I doing here?
Oh dear. You should have your own podcast just for like the snobbish, professional studio work.
It's like cameras don't exist.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Whereas I quite like the 500 PF on the Z50. And I think
everything on Z50 just makes sense. It just works wonderful.
It does. I think that everyone should shoot the Z50. Right. Randall, thank you very much for your contribution to the Coffee Fund. He says, I consider this stream as essential for us viewers. Thank you for your service. You're welcome. Even if I don't shoot raw all the time, day in and day out, it's terrible. I've been slapped on the wrist verbally.
We all have our flaws.
Yeah, exactly.
Some of them just have too many of them.
Petty foibles. See, Roy said, and this is really interesting because I didn't know this, he's gone back to strobes because LED panel lighting can have holes in its color spectrum.
Yep.
That's interesting.
I hate to shoot with LED lights, just generally, and especially like after I shot once with some cheap panels I borrowed from someone. Yeah. And I shot a portrait, and the skin tones came out all purple, and you couldn't color correct them.
Oh, no.
You just couldn't color correct them. So, no, for photography work, definitely I would use old-fashioned continuous lights or strobes. So I have Elinchrom strobes, which are 10 years old, still do really decent job. I think any strobes from 50 years old will still do a decent job.
Yeah.
But LED lights, those are new, and they're getting better and better.
But they're quite white, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, when I talk about LED lights, I'm not talking rotoluxes even.
Yeah.
I don't like rotoluxes personally. I know there's a lot of people who swear by them, but the reason why I don't like them because you can't put a nice softbox on them. So
Right.
everything just looks harsh, you know. So, but LED lights are getting better and better, and the color consistency becomes important. But I agree with Roy that if you have to use lights, I only use LED lights when I have to. That's what I would say.
Right. Okay. Fair enough.
And I'll get a T-shirt for that.
I'm gonna buy all those photography T-shirts.
We should,
and
lots
then
of
we'll.
praise always means the merch.
I think that's what we should do. Very important question, Richard. What is the coffee fund? Well, the coffee fund is the little tip pot where you can put a quid or two in there. It's super chat. So if you're signed into YouTube, then there will be a $ somewhere on the screen. I don't know. I never know where it is. I think it's down there. Or if you're watching on a tablet, it's like to the left or something. But you can just show your appreciation. We appreciate you showing your appreciation. Also, thank you to Randall who said, thumbs up, please, share and subscribe, please. Yes, absolutely. If you can give us a thumbs up, we would very much appreciate it. It means that the stream kind of just goes to other realms. It climbs to whole new heights. Or something like that.
I can see you watched Mortal Kombat the other day. Yeah, it's all about the realms.
It is about, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's all about the realms,
Fair
that's
enough.
right. And thank you, Joy, for your contribution to
Thank
the
you.
Coffee Fund on that note. So now, in terms of, white balance shooting, if you are just going out for a day happy snapping and you're maybe doing some landscape photography or something like that, you'd say, shoot in RAW, pop it on auto. Is that what your advice
I would
is?
recommend so. I would say if you just photographing one, let's say, landscape scene, and you're going to be there for a whole day, let's say, yeah, you can stick a profile, etc., etc. But if you're out and about, you go on a hike, you know, you hiking the whole day, then you go to the pub, have a nice beer, have a nice, I don't know, some pie, you know, what pie is nowadays.
You're going to a gastropub, so then you're going to have a steak and kidney pie.
You go to gastropub, I go to Chippies, you see. But then you may want to take a picture, and then your preset will give you completely off colors because now you're indoors and the light is different.
Yeah.
So in terms of this, auto white balance makes sense.
Yeah.
When you're out and about, when you travel photographer, when you keep in, let's say, snapping things that what you say, oh, bird, you know, take a picture, you know, oh, you know, snake,
run
away.
Take a picture, then run away.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, at this point, yeah, auto white balance.
Okay.
But if you're there for purpose and you're going to sit there to take this perfect shot to get the light line up and the waves going to certain parts and etc., the butterfly on the top corner, then you want to set a proper preset and get it right. You know, that's what I'm saying. So you can be flexible. It's the same with a lot of people say, well, auto ISO or manual ISO. Well, if you know how to use manual ISO, which a lot of photographers do, but let's say I'm talking about newcomers.
Yeah.
If you want to have one less thing to worry about, then stick it on auto ISO because maybe you're photographing, especially like a simple example I always say is like, let's say you skiing on the skiing resort. In a hotel is really dark. You come out is really bright.
Yeah.
Your ISO setting is going to be completely different.
Yeah.
So for us, you know, old school people, you know, we know how to use ISO. We know we're going to set ISO before even coming out of that hotel, you know.
Yeah.
But for people who just starting and they want to have less variables to worry about, stick it on auto. You should be fine. Camera will get you there about 90-95%.
Yeah, exactly. Just as a little qualifier also to my JPEG shooting, because I do all of my Bookstagram shots are shot in JPEG and I don't care. I'm going to say it. Yeah, I'm going to dig the hole.
Keep digging.
But what I will say is that depending on where I am shooting, because my house has very low ceilings, the light is pretty rubbish. In one room, I have to shoot on a sort of, it's kind of like natural daylight setting. A big window. I never use the artificial lights. In another room, I have to have a different white balance setting because if you are shooting JPEG, you don't get much flexibility. If the pictures are not important to you, you can tweak them. You can tweak your color temperature in your blimmin' iPhone now.
Pictures are not important to you.
No, but you know what I mean?
Why
It's
are you
like
doing photography
I'm not
to
going to
start
blow
with?
up my picture of a book and stick it on the wall.
You're right. That's the thing.
But you can tweak your JPEGs. But I would say, as JP said, be anally retentive. If you're shooting in JPEG, it's like, yes, try and get it right in camera as much as possible.
Yeah, I always say that think about like for people, let's say coming from film photography, not to everyone, but film.
Yeah.
Think about JPEGs as slides. They don't have much room. So
Yeah.
if you didn't get it right in camera,
then
there's not much room for improvements in the post. While raw, we'll definitely have more room.
Yeah. So. Exactly. Terry says, save something for Foteini. I would like to point out that Foteini is in Greece, eating all the Greek food and having all the wonderful time, even if it's raining. So don't worry. She's having a great time.
Much better than us. No, we have a wonderful time
here.
Yeah. Talking about RAWs versus JPEGs.
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh, dear. Go to the pub. Hans said that's the most English description of photography I ever heard. Go to the pub. Yeah, so you go for a walk, then you go to the pub, or you go to the chippy. That's
because I'm English.
Average day out. But I do think that if you are trying to do as little work as possible in post-processing, and whether you shoot RAW or JPEG, just not wanting to, let's say, faff around, then doing your white balance presets or doing a custom setting will just help you greatly in the long run.
Yeah. So that's
like a lot of things.
Be flexible.
Yeah.
Don't necessarily need to do all this all the time.
Yeah.
But for something that is very important to you, definitely you can go this extra, step. But for something that is not that much and you just want to have a camera with you and have good fun, stick it on auto.
Yeah, exactly. Sam says anything posted to web media just doesn't need a big file, therefore auto and JPEG does the job. Now, just as I know we're running out of time.
My doesn't agree to that.
But here's the thing,
No, it's true,
and this is a point that we could probably discuss, but one does not need a D850 to take pictures of stuff for eBay or for Facebook or for Instagram or any of those things. I don't think that one needs 45 megapixels for that.
I should cancel my Hasselblad back 100 megapixel back order.
But you know what I mean? And we get kind of a bit crazy about the subject of having the best files possible and shooting in RAW and stuff like that. But if your pictures are only going to be viewed on a screen that fits in your hand and you can't zoom into that anyway or whatever, then
that's true.
You want that immediate impression. That's what you're going for in those situations. I don't think you're going for, wow, I'm going to print this and put this in a gallery.
But I think all of us secretly have this small idea that this picture will be worth something 10 years down the road.
I think it's worth something to us sentimentally.
Especially us as hoarders. We like to keep all our files.
Yeah.
All 100 pictures of the same subject from the same angle.
I see.
Because maybe one day I'll come back to it.
Yeah.
And I'll choose that file,
Yeah.
It never happens. But,
no, it doesn't. Yeah. I've got wedding shoots going back like 10 years that they've got the files. But I always think to myself, like, oh, what if they lose their...
Yeah, I definitely need to improve my culling process,
Yes, exactly. John, welcome. So I was glad you made it. And thank you to Terry for your contribution to the Coffee Fund. John says, I love post-processing. I think if you enjoy the process of post-processing, then fantastic. Then you can, shoot and then just completely change the picture if you feel like it.
That's the thing. Everyone does different things. So that's the thing. When you post-process an image, let's say of a landscape or something like this, you can enjoy that.
Yeah.
If you have to spend 2-3 hours per face retouching all the imperfections, while we're all going for natural look and everything, it's still 2-3 hours of Photoshop.
Yeah.
And you have a set of 10 images, so you're going to spend 2 or 3 days doing that. That just sucks the whole soul out of you. So there's, again, different levels of this.
Exactly. And some people prefer to create an image in post-processing rather than, creating it in camera. I think it's a different art form almost.
It's a medium, isn't it? That's the thing. And everyone uses it a different way.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Right. I think that's probably covered everything we want to talk about white balance. Did
we answer the question on white balance? We didn't, but we talked about it.
We talked about it a lot.
Yeah.
In length, it was time for us to talk about Kelvin, and that's what we did. So
the answer is, if you want to definitely do this go next level, but you can also keep it simple. And cameras are so good nowadays that it will get you there to about 95%, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that there's one thing knowing all the tools in your toolbox and using them so you can understand white balance and then not necessarily have to go into doing presets.
That's true. It's very important because the reason, let's say, why we always talk about shutter speed, ISO, white balance, aperture things, It's not necessarily that, let's say, you will need to know how to use the camera manually, which is a bonus if you do.
Yeah.
But just to understand what camera does, even let's say what f11 does to the blades, to the diaphragm blades in camera,
Yeah.
or what ISO does to the camera for light sensitivity or white balance. Just so kind of having this foundation of understanding what camera does will save you a lot of problems in the future, because if your camera just does something random, and then you can generally try to figure it out.
Yeah.
Like common thing we have is bracketing, where people say, "Oh, my camera, I don't know what's wrong with it. It takes one dark shot, one bright shot."
Yeah,
or
all my shutter speeds are all over the place, and I don't
Exactly.
know why. And it's bracketing. And if you know some element, if you know every little nook and cranny of your camera, then you would know that straight
Exactly.
away.
I
So
mean,
it helps.
It's always good to know this.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily you need to use it every day.
Yeah. Exactly. Right. Thank you very much for joining us, everyone. Thank you for all your wonderful feedback, your contributions, your comments, your suggestions. They were all fantastic. A few people had some tips and tools and color passports and various different things that they were advising. So do check that out if you are interested in that. If you haven't already, please give us a like. We would love for you to subscribe. We're at 7.3 thousand subscribers now. So
Pretty good,
we
isn't it?
need to go for 8,000. When do we need to go for 8,000 by, do you think? Should we go
Tomorrow? No.
You
Shall
think
we
we
give a
should
couple
go-
of months?
Should we go to like end of July? See if we can get 8,000
Sounds good. Yeah, that's
by the
good.
end of July.
That's what, about good 6 weeks, isn't
Yeah,
it?
so tell your friends to subscribe to our channel.
Your relatives.
Your relatives, exactly. And we will see you next week for another live stream, hopefully.
Yeah, make sure Roy if she has to.
And I will have a t-shirt. Right. Have a great weekend, everyone. Thank you very much.